Podcast Talk.
Learn English naturally.
How people actually talk about plans. Hey everyone, welcome back to our English podcast. My name is Emily, and today we're talking about plans. Not big life goals or perfect schedules, but the way people actually talk about plans in everyday life, when they're not fully sure and things can easily change.
Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel. And I really like this topic, Emily, because this is exactly how people speak in real life. Most of the time, our plans are not clear and we don't want to sound too strong or too serious.
Exactly, Daniel. And this is where many English learners feel stuck. They think they need a clear and confident answer, but real conversations don't sound like that. Real life is usually uncertain, and our language reflects that.
Yes, and people often forget this. They want to sound perfect, but native speakers often sound unsure. They hesitate, they pause, and they leave space for plans to change.
So let's start with a very common situation. Someone asks you a simple question you hear all the time at work, with friends, or online. What are your plans?
And very often, when you hear that question, you don't have a clear answer. You know something might happen, but nothing is fixed yet.
And that's completely normal. You don't need a perfect plan to answer this question. You just need language that sounds honest and gives you space to change your mind.
That's why people don't use strong language here. They usually avoid saying things like, I will definitely do this, because they're not 100% sure.
Instead, people use softer words, very small, very simple words that sound natural in everyday conversation, like the word maybe.
That word is everywhere, and it makes life much easier.
For example, you can say, maybe I'll go out tonight. This answer sounds relaxed, and it doesn't promise anything.
Or you can say, maybe I'll just stay home. And that sounds just as natural.
Both answers are completely fine. There's no pressure and no need to explain yourself.
Another phrase people use all the time is, I think. It sounds polite and it keeps things open.
Right. For example, I think I'll meet a friend later. You're sharing an idea, not a final decision.
And that's what real plans usually are. Just ideas that can change.
People also say, I'm planning to, but it's important to remember this phrase doesn't mean a promise.
It just shows intention, nothing more.
For example, I'm planning to start next week. It sounds positive, but it still leaves space for change.
And that's exactly how people actually talk about plans. Simple, flexible, and very human.
So when you hear that question, what are your plans? It's completely normal to stop for a second and think. You're not failing. You're not bad at English. You're just being human. Because in real life, plans are often unclear, and we don't always want to decide right away.
Yes, and this moment of silence is important. Many learners are afraid of pauses. They think they must answer immediately. But pauses are natural. Native speakers pause all the time, especially when they talk about plans.
And after that pause, you don't need a long explanation. You don't need details. You can start with something very small and simple, and that already sounds natural.
For example, you can start your answer with, I think. This phrase is very useful. It shows that you're thinking, not making a final decision, and people understand that immediately.
Yes, and when you say, I think, you give yourself time. You can say, I think I'll meet a friend later, and stop there. That's already a full good answer.
And if your plans change later, that's fine. Nobody expects you to be exact. Plans are not contracts. They're just ideas for now.
Another phrase people use a lot is, I might. And this phrase is very important in real conversations. It shows that something is possible, but you're not ready to decide yet. You're leaving space for change, and you're being honest about how you feel in that moment.
Yes, and I think this phrase feels very safe for learners. Because you're not promising anything. You're just sharing a possibility. And that's how many plans start in real life, as small, uncertain ideas.
For example, you can say, I might go to the gym later. This doesn't mean you will go. It just means you're thinking about it and you're open to the idea.
And the same works with simple plans. You can say, I might meet a friend or I might stay home. Both answers sound natural and nobody expects more details.
And this is something many English learners don't realize at first. You don't need to explain your plans in detail. You don't need a long story or a clear schedule. In real conversations, people usually share just a general idea, something that sounds natural and honest in that moment, and that is already more than enough.
Yes, because real conversations are not presentations. People are not waiting for a full explanation. They just want to understand what you're thinking right now, what direction your plans are going in, without pressure and without expectations.
That's why simple phrases are so powerful. They help you stay relaxed and confident, even when you're not sure about your plans. Instead of forcing a decision, you allow yourself to speak naturally and keep the conversation comfortable.
One phrase that does this really well is, we'll see. It sounds very simple, but it clearly shows that you're open to possibilities. You're not saying yes and you're not saying no, you're just leaving space for things to change.
This phrase is especially useful when someone invites you somewhere and you don't want to decide immediately. We'll see doesn't sound rude or distant. It sounds calm, polite, and very natural in everyday English.
And this is the key idea we want you to remember. You don't need perfect plans that sound confident in English. You just need language that feels honest and real because that's how people actually speak in everyday life.
Another thing that really helps is remembering that plans are not fixed. They are not final decisions. They are just thoughts we have right now. So when you talk about plans in English, you're really just sharing what's in your head at this moment, not what will definitely happen later.
Yes, and when you think about it this way, talking about plans becomes much easier. You don't feel pressure to be correct. You don't feel pressure to be confident. You're just describing your current situation, and that feels much more natural.
This is why everyday English sounds soft. People use language that gives them freedom. Freedom to change their mind, freedom to cancel, and freedom to decide later. And that softness is not a weakness. It's actually a strength.
Exactly. And when you start using this kind of language, your English begins to sound more natural. Not like a lesson, not like a textbook, but like a real conversation between real people.
Now, let's talk about future plans. Plans that are not for today or tomorrow, but for next week, next month, or even next year. When plans are far away, people usually sound even less certain, and that's completely normal.
Yes, because the future is unpredictable. We don't know what will change. So people use softer phrases like I want to or I'd like to. These phrases show interest, but not commitment.
For example, you can say, I'd like to travel more next year. This doesn't mean you have tickets. It doesn't mean you have a plan. It just means it's something you're thinking about.
And the important thing here is that people understand this immediately. When you talk about future plans in this soft way, nobody expects dates, details, or a clear structure. People don't wait for you to explain everything. They simply understand your general direction, and the conversation moves forward naturally without pressure.
This is especially important if you feel nervous speaking English. Many learners think they need to impress people with perfect sentences. But real conversations don't work like that. What really matters is sounding honest and relaxed, even if your answer is simple and not very detailed.
And honesty creates connection between people. When you speak honestly about your plans, others feel more relaxed talking to you. They don't feel pressure either. The conversation becomes easier, and it feels like a real human interaction, not a language test.
Let's also talk about plans that change, because this happens very often in real life. You can have an idea in the morning, and by the evening, everything looks different. That doesn't mean you were wrong. It just means life happened.
English has very natural ways to talk about this. You can say, my plans changed, or something came up. These phrases are very common, and they don't sound dramatic or negative. They simply explain the situation in a calm way.
And when you use phrases like this, you don't need to explain every detail. Most people understand immediately. They know that plans change, and they don't expect a long explanation from you.
This again takes a lot of pressure off you. You don't feel stressed about sounding perfect. You don't worry about grammar or structure. You simply focus on communicating your idea, and that is the main goal of language.
This is why listening to real conversations is so useful. You hear how people actually speak. You hear pauses, uncertainty, and soft language, and you start to understand that perfect English is not what real communication sounds like.
Exactly. Real English is flexible and adaptive. It changes depending on the situation, the people you talk to, and how sure you feel in that moment. Talking about plans shows this very clearly.
So the next time someone asks you about your plans, try to remember this conversation. Give yourself time to think, allow yourself to pause, and choose words that feel natural and comfortable for you.
You don't need to rush. You don't need to decide everything immediately. English gives you space to think and to change your mind, and it's important to use that space.
The more you practice speaking this way, the more confident you will feel. Not because your English becomes perfect, but because it sounds real and natural. And that confidence grows over time.
And this kind of confidence helps you not only when you talk about plans, it helps you in everyday conversations in general. At work, with friends, or when you meet new people, you start feeling more relaxed. You stop worrying so much about being correct, and you focus more on sharing your thoughts.
Because language is not really about being correct all the time. It's about connection. It's about understanding each other. And when you allow yourself to speak more freely, even with mistakes, your English starts sounding more natural.
Many learners don't realize how important this is. They think confidence comes from perfect grammar. But in real life, confidence comes from feeling comfortable, from knowing that it's okay to pause, to think, and to change your mind.
And talking about plans is a perfect place to practice this. Because plans are naturally uncertain. You don't need to sound strong or final. You just need to sound honest, and that already creates good communication.
So if you ever feel stuck when someone asks about your plans, remember that you don't need a perfect answer. You just need words that feel right in that moment. That's how real conversations work.
When you practice speaking English this way, something very important happens over time. You stop translating every sentence in your head. You stop checking if every word is correct. Instead, you start trusting the feeling of the language. And that's when speaking becomes much more natural and calm.
Yes, and this trust changes everything. Because when you trust yourself, you speak more, and the more you speak, the more experience you get. Not from rules, but from real situations and real conversations.
And this is exactly why we focus so much on everyday topics. Things like plans, routines, feelings, or simple situations. These are the moments when English is actually used. Not in perfect sentences, but in small, honest exchanges between people.
Many learners wait until they feel ready to speak. But the truth is, you never really feel ready. You feel ready only after you start speaking. After you allow yourself to be imperfect.
That's why it's so important to practice regularly. Even a few minutes a day makes a difference. Listening, repeating, and just getting used to the sound of English helps your brain feel more comfortable with the language.
And comfort leads to confidence. When you feel comfortable, you stop being afraid of mistakes. You focus on meaning, not perfection. And that's when communication really works.
So, if you're listening to this and thinking, I still make mistakes, That's okay. Mistakes mean you're using the language, and using the language is how you improve.
And remember, native speakers also hesitate. They also change their minds. They also say maybe and we'll see. So when you speak this way, you're not doing something wrong. You're speaking like a real person.
This is exactly the kind of English we want to share on this channel. English that sounds natural, English that feels human, English that you can actually use in real life.
If this approach feels right to you, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We share many episodes like this with different everyday topics to help you learn English naturally.
We really believe that learning English doesn't have to be stressful. It can be calm, it can be enjoyable, and it can fit naturally into your daily life.
Here you'll find many interesting topics, real conversations, and practical language you can use right away, all to help you feel more confident in English.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like the video and leave a comment. Let us know what topics you'd like to hear next. Your feedback really helps us.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us. We're happy you're here, and we'll see you very soon in the next English podcast. Bye.
Goodbye!